Statements and opinions made on the following program are not necessarily those of this station or its affiliates. Fighting Corruption with Anthony Greco. Fighting Government Corruption, the real gangsters.
Greetings from the most corrupt county in the United States, Nye County. I am Anthony Greco, and here we are another Monday night trying to get some things straightened out. I have a couple of things to talk about before I get to my guests. And one of the saddest things, they keep saying that Nevada's doing so good and we recovered from the big recession that we had, and that is total false. We are nowhere near where we were at before the collapse. But we're doing so good. Nevada's unemployment is still the highest in the United States. That's how good we're doing. Our unemployment is the highest in the United States. Also, the reason why we have a program like this is to try to wake people up. Only 30% of the Americans know who their U.S. senators are. 30%. Where are the other 70% of the people? Are they all smoking crack? What are they doing? Why aren't they paying attention? You're going to get a government like you have in Washington when you're not paying attention. You need to wake up and start holding these people's feet to the fire. This is just a small little radio station, and we get out on the internet and YouTube to wake people up. But everybody that could hear me needs to tell a friend to do the same thing. Listen to what's going on. Call a relative from another state. Tell them to go onto our YouTube channel and listen to what's going on here. My job is to fix Pahrump and Nye County, and I want to teach everybody how to do it in their backyard. So then we can get our state strong and use our state's rights to protect us from an out-of-control federal government. Wake up. We need to do this. I don't have any children, so after I'm gone, it's all up to you guys. But all you people that worry about my kids and my grandchildren, well, you better start waking up today. Because if you wait for them to do it, it's too late. So wake up today and start getting involved. One of my last shows that I had before the summer, when I took the summer break, and I waited until the primary. And I turned around and told everybody, there's 24,000 people in Pahrump. 500 people are paying attention, and 100 people are doing all the work. Well, you know what? You can't fight an out-of-control government with 100 people doing all the work. Somebody's going to get burnt out. So the rest of you 24,000 people, get on the bandwagon here. And if you always talk, well, I got to do it for my kids. Well, start doing it today, because tomorrow may be too late. Remember what I told you. Only 30% of Americans can name their U.S. senators. That's pretty sad. That's just like why New Mexico has New Mexico, USA on their plates. Because a lot of people don't even know that New Mexico is not part of Mexico. So where is that at? I watch all kinds of media, and I was watching Meet the Depressed. I call it Meet the Depressed because they're all crazy. And they had Michael Moore and Glenn Beck on. If you wanted to get through two different sides of the spectrum, you got it right there. But you want to hear what was crazy? They both agreed on what was going on. Michael Moore was afraid that Donald Trump was going to get elected. So I want Donald Trump to get elected because he's not a politician, and he's not going to play these games with the New World Order and globalism, because Donald Trump said nationalism, not globalism. If you're listening to me and you don't know what globalism is, you better turn on your computer and check it out, because you're not going to really like it. So this is the reason why I want Donald Trump. Do I think he's the best person to be president? No, there probably is somebody better. But you know what the problem is? A real good person doesn't want to run for president because he doesn't want to be torn apart and have his family dragged through the mud. But Donald Trump is willing to put his neck out on the line. And we cannot have another Clinton in office. This is a disaster. If you listen to what's going on with the emails, this person turns around, tells Wall Street something else, turns around, tells the super liberals, progressive something else. And remember, that word progressive, you should look that up too. You're really not going to like it. I think it was Woodrow Wilson who was the first progressive who brought that to light in 1913. Where did that get us? If you remember what was coming around in that era, I think we got the Fed, okay, which 98% of the population think it's part of the federal government. No. The Fed controls the federal government and controls all the money. And they want you to be in debt because the Fed doesn't make any money if you had a debt-free currency. They make money off of people being in debt. Okay, they caused that collapse. They worked on collapsing the housing market. You really, what I need you to know is half of what you've been told in your life before this program, think of it as being a lie. And maybe your parents told you stuff and they were lied to. Not that your parents wanted to misinform you. But most of what you're told about how things work in this country is a lie. It's what they want you to know. That's why if you tune into ABC, NBC, and CBS, let me tell you something. You might as well smoke pot because you have no clue on what's going on anyway. Okay, and it's not that I'm against smoking marijuana. I don't do it because it's illegal. But being somebody who worked with hospice, I know it's very good for a lot of people. And the only reason why it's illegal is because Randolph Hearst in 1933 lobbied Congress to make the hemp plant illegal because he was worried that he was going to lose his fortune because the forest that he owned, he wouldn't be able to make paper because hemp, you can make paper faster out of hemp than you can out of trees. So a lot of things you've been told are a lie. I'm not going to lie to you on the program. If I make a mistake and I find out, I will correct it. If somebody out there thinks I'm making a mistake, please call and let us know because we will correct it. There's a lot of important things on here. I jump around a little bit because that's the way my brain works. But, like I said, you had on Meet the Press, you had Michael Moore and Glenn Beck agreeing on what was going on. We haven't had a good president since Ronald Reagan. Before him was probably Truman. And the last one before that was probably George Washington. So, you know what? It's very hard to find a real good president. George Washington is one of my favorite founding fathers. Okay, that's why I fly the Betsy Ross flag at my house, because I don't believe that we've been following the Constitution since then. And if we stop and they destroy our Constitution, we're in a lot of trouble. Because it's the rights that our founding father gave us through a divine intervention is what made this country great. You know, Dwight Lilly had a show on Friday and he was talking about 4 wars that we got into over lies. And you really need to do your research. Because, like I said before, a lot of things you've been told in your life is a lie. So, I want you to pay attention to what's going on. Everything on the internet is not true. Okay, just because it's there doesn't mean it's true. Do your research. One of the things that made Glenn Beck good when he was on Fox was he started telling people things and he would tell them to look it up. And the things he was telling them to look up that day would spike on Google because people are that interested. And we need to get all your family members and wake them up. Yeah, it's good to watch football, it's relaxation and everything, but it's not everything. You need to know what's going on in your government because remember, if you don't tell your government what you want, they're going to give you what they want to give you, and I guarantee you it's not going to be something you like. So, I gave you my rant. Oh, one thing I got to tell you about out-of-control government. I was watching the news, and a 2-year-old girl last week got a $75 ticket for littering in Las Vegas. They gave a 2-year-old girl a $75 ticket for littering. Do you think that ticket was going to teach a 2-year-old kid a lesson? I don't think so. And that's not the way you teach a 2-year-old a lesson. Somebody should just tell her, you're not supposed to do that. But a $75 fine, we have a person that calls into the program and they say it's taxation through citation. And if you want money extracted from you, keep letting them do that to you. Your government is out of control, and we got the whip at this radio station, and we're going to whip them back into control. So we've got a lot of things we're going to talk about today. I think water is going to be one of them. So take it away, Ross.
Hi, everybody. I'm here going to talk to you a little bit about what's going on in the Valley as far as the water engineer goes, and some of the issues that are being presented to the courts at this time. One of them is the issue of whether or not the water engineer has any kind of authority over private wells. He's telling everybody that his authority is derived out of Nevada Revised Statute 533.025, which defines a person, but it doesn't include a natural person. It only includes government entities, utility companies, the county, or governments, things of that nature. So, since the claim was made that he doesn't have any kind of authority over natural persons, he said, "Oh, well, what we're doing here is, we're using NRS 533.010 and 534.014, and what we're doing is that defines a person, but it doesn't say a natural person in there. So what we're doing is we're going to go to the Nevada Revised Statute 0.039." Mm-hmm. And what it says there is it says that if your statute that you're dealing with doesn't define a person, or if it's absolutely necessary to have an understanding and a meaning of the statute, you can use the definition of a person in this statute. So it's kind of a catch-all. But both of those statutes do define a person, and they do not include a natural person. So he's saying that he has a right to use that statute to bring in a natural person in there. But the only problem is, both of those statutes used to have a natural person in there, and they took them out in 1985. So, that shows a clear legislative intent that they didn't want the word natural person in there. So, a natural person is not under the state water engineer. He can't come on your property and tell you that he's going to cut your 2 acre feet down to a 1/4 acre foot a year. Okay? And that's what he's planning on doing.
What gives him the right to change, remove stuff from an NRS?
Well, first of all, I want to interject something if I can, Ross. My 8.5 years of research and due diligence is going to totally blow that out of the water at some point in some court, because that 533 statute and that 534 statute falls between the 1 and 7 statutes that all constitutionally and unlawfully fail. So they're looking at stuff there that is part of the decades of the stealth fraud that's been discovered. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't have no standing at all. Period.
Right. No. Yeah, that's what I've been telling. I actually told people that the state water engineer doesn't have any power because his position was put in place by statutes that are no good.
Right.
By fraudsters. Yeah.
Yeah, by fraud. Okay. By fraud. But now, all that aside, if you're not going to address that issue in your case, and you just want to go by the statutes themselves and follow all the rules that they say apply, the bottom line is, it still doesn't apply.
Well, that's Winker's presumption.
Yeah.
So he's operating on the presumption that those are valid statutes. Now, she happens to know beyond any shadow of a doubt, and I know this to be a fact, that she is well aware that those statutes constitutionally and lawfully fail, and yet, like I said, it goes all the way back to the Willing case where she totally misrepresented the truth and caused the appellate court to err dramatically, put people in great peril.
The other problem we have is that number one is what their state water engineer is doing now is he's usurping his authority, and what he's doing is he does have control over people that drill wells. So what he's telling them is, when you go drill a well at somebody's house or on their property, now you have to put a meter on it.
Yeah, I think they passed that in 2015.
You're required to put a meter on it, but those regulations don't apply on private property for a person who is not included in this in the statutes. How do you get control? So you're going to get control through the guy that drills the well? That's ridiculous. And so if if now they're saying too that if you take the meter off the well, then you can be fined and put in jail, and that's ridiculous. It's private property. Since when do they have the right to tell you how much water you can pump in the first place? The whole issue comes down to the fact that the state of Nevada, or the water engineer, who is the state of Nevada, basically representing the state, says that the definition of percolating water has been changed. Percolating water is water that follows no particular course. It's not, in other words, it doesn't follow a stream bed. It is not an underground stream. It's not a river, and it flows through the land in undetermined directions, and depending on the how much water and what the flow is and all that sort of thing. That's called percolating water, basically. That's the kind of basic definition. The problem is that he says they've changed the definition of percolating water. Now, they didn't change the definition of percolating water because you got to go to the dictionary and change the dictionary definition of percolating water, and they haven't done that. So the definition of percolating water in the dictionary is still the same. So the problem is what are these people doing? He's saying we're going to change the definition of a word. I mean, the whole idea is that when you look at the law, you can go to any dictionary and you can find out what the word means. Now they're saying you can't go to the dictionary. You got to go over here because we changed the dictionary. We don't like the dictionary definition. Why don't they just say, percolating water doesn't apply in Nevada? But they don't say that. They want to change the word and slowly change the entire meaning of it. And
is that called evolution?
No, we call that devolution. But in Gary's little mantra there, that we have this. There's a little piece that we put in there that was pretty good that you guys might want to read if you haven't yet. And it has to do with the first thing that they do, that politicians do, is they attack the words and what they mean. That's how they change things slowly but surely, is because if they attack the words and they change the meanings, then you don't really know that there's been a change. You see what I'm saying? So there's a little site here in our thing here, and I'll read it to you. It says basically, it says long before 1984 gave us the adjective Orwellian to describe the political corruption of language and thought. Thucydides observed how factional struggle for power make words their first victims, describing the horrors of civil war on the islands of Corcyra and the Peloponnesian War. And this is during the time of the Greeks, Aristotle and all those guys. He says words had to change their ordinary meaning and take on that which was now given them. So what happened is George Orwell, who is a very intelligent man, by the way, explained the reason for this in his for the degradation of the human language in his essay Politics in the English Language. And he said political speech and writing are largely the defense of the indefensible. So tyrannical power and its abuses comprise the indefensible, and that must be verbally disguised, like Hillary is doing, where she's saying, a lot of people are worried that there's no room for them in Donald Trump's world, if he's elected president. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
So it becomes a regime of lies.
Yes. So it becomes a regime of lies, and it's just like the Soviet Union. They lost all these cosmonauts in outer space, and then they didn't include them in their record because they wanted a perfect record. So they finally sent a guy up and he came back alive. So then that was their first astronaut in outer space. You know what I'm saying? And hey, who knows? We may have been, we may have the same kind of history. I mean, because they all lie. I mean, every government lies. I mean, you were talking about we got involved in all these wars. The sinking of the Lusitania. The Gulf of Tonkin incident, firing across the bow. I mean, that was a National Security Agency spy ship, and it was within the territorial waters of Vietnam. I mean, they had a right to shoot at it anyway, you know what I mean? You fire a warning shot. But all that, even McNamara, who was the Secretary of State at the time, was giving a lecture at Harvard, and he said it never happened. They just made it up.
That's right.
They just wanted to go over there. They needed some money. They wanted the oil. They wanted cheap oil, and they wanted to expand government. They needed to spend a lot of money, and the best way to hide that is have a war. So that's why a lot of people are very concerned with the new information that came out that the Pentagon is missing, over $7 billion. So we're how do you account for that? Well, just hold a war and you say, well, it got sucked into that somehow. You know what I mean? So what are they doing with all this money? That's the question. What are they doing with all this money? We have 2 space programs. We have NASA, then we have the Defense Department space program. And since the year we went to the moon, and currently the Defense Department space program has spent over $25 trillion. Now, tell me, if we don't have a McDonald's on the space station, one on the moon, and one on Mars, and something ain't right, because that's a lot of money. That's more than our national deficit without some of the other issues, that are factored in. But, so there's a lot of stealing going on. It's all toward black budgets. But who's running these black budgets? They're not being run by government, because government has to answer FOIAs. All these private corporations, they don't have to answer any of them.
Probably MJ12.
It could be the Legislative Council Bureau.
Well, they're a part of that too.
Yeah,
they have their own
shadow
state.
government.
They have their own state siphon off.
The Legislative Council Bureau you can't even subpoena or get their records through discovery if you sue them. So I mean, it's a black hole that sucks all the nefarious, all the crooked, illegally passed laws and all the records for it, sucks it right down into the Legislative Council Bureau, and they're insulated, even though they're not the constitutional repository for the records of the legislature. The Secretary of State is, and she's required by law to fork over the records when asked for them. But they're not. They absolutely have immunity from that, and so they just sit on them and keep everybody in the dark and just let things go along and as they go. So the problem we have here is that we don't have a government anymore. We have an oligarchy, an aristocracy of
tyrant's attorney,
of political people that are involved, that have reached pinnacles in their party. Some of them are just names that have been in politics for years, like Adam Laxalt. I think he's a nice guy, overall. I've talked to him, but he doesn't have a clue. And
absolutely clueless.
When we talked to him when he was running for office, I talked with some other people, and I asked him some questions. He didn't know the answers. He said, but I can find out. I don't know the answers to everything, he said, but I can find out. But the problem is he hasn't changed one thing in the way that the Attorney General's office runs. Not one.
Ross, I'd welcome a debate with the governor, calling all the legislators.
The only thing he did was find $3 million for the rape kits.
Well, I'm not sure he even did that. I mean, after all, his uncle is Paul Laxalt. He might have just said, "Hey, here, that way you can look good." Who knows?
Anthony, I'm ready to debate all these politicians on any level of this, the biggest legal fight in Nevada history.
See, the problem with that is they're afraid to let people know they know what's going. Either they don't know what's going on, which is a problem, or they do know what's going on, which is a bigger problem.
Well, they can't afford to expand any record, and that's why even the wanker here telling all these stories and misrepresentations to the appellate court. That is the most shameful thing a judge could do, is to cause that type of affirmance of a conviction based upon the misrepresentations coming out of that judge. That's grounds for impeachment, or she should just walk.
Right. Yeah, she's never going to do that.
Well,
she thinks she's the king of the world.
Yeah, well, we're going to see about that.
You're talking about monies and government. Boeing is working on these missiles to shoot down other missiles that are coming in for an attack. And they have 2 places that they're able to shoot these missiles out of on the West Coast. And they don't even get 50% that work. That can't even track an incoming missile, and they're going to build another facility on the East Coast, but they still didn't get these to work right.
Well, I want to expand on just a little bit when you're talking about the missile problem. There's a more serious problem. There's 1,100 satellites in the Orion, in that arena, and they're going to start falling to Earth in December. And there are different parts of the country that they estimate some of those satellites will kill anywhere from 1 to 5 million people that hit. So they won't burn up in the atmosphere. So I happen to know, and I've been privy to working on some projects where they're trying to take these drones and they're trying to push them into 2 or 3 year orbits. The problem with that is the company that's behind it, SRC and those companies, they're trying to claim those satellites like open sea treasures. So there's some few going on in it's been labeled top secret. There's other things that I'm well aware of that is going on that is absolutely going to be phenomenal. So even the people in Pahrump should not be surprised if they're not having hellfire rain down on them coming from satellites and little bitty pieces of radioactive material. And they're going to be thinking that the Russians did it or somebody launched some kind of nuke or what have you. But really, folks, you're about to see a whole lot more satellites than you ever could imagine falling to Earth.
Well, we just had that, 6 weeks ago. People took pictures from Vegas. There was something shooting across the sky, burning up, and they said it was something that had to do with NASA or something like that. It was probably one of these satellites that are coming down.
Well, they're hoping that these missiles that Boeing and them are also working on are also used to deter that as well, because they're having a little feud going on with these drone companies that are trying to claim these satellites. Once they latch onto them and push them into a 2 or 3 year orbit, they want to own them. And some of your big industries are not sitting too well with that. They would actually rather see them destroyed, and actually it don't even bother them if it kills people.
No, we're just hamsters that turn the wheel. We could get some more hamsters to go in that wheel and turn it.
So when you look up in the sky and you say it's a bird, it's a plane, you better be careful. It's going to be some debris that might take you out.
Yep. Oh yeah, I tell you, most people don't have a clue on what's going on.
The other problem they have is they have a big problem with these computer chips that their governments has these companies making. Turns out half of them are fake; they're not even real, and they're having all kinds of problems with these computer chips that they're trying to use for our fighter aircraft and for our guided missile systems and stuff. And it's just junk. And then people are making trillions of dollars and pocketing the money and just giving them fake stuff. And so 1 out of 10 is not even working. They got less than that working out. So they're having all kinds of problems, and there's been some scandals down there on the East Coast, down toward Virginia, where the Navy is down there, and all the way down to Florida. And some of those people have been kind of called down on the carpet, and people are disappearing or committing suicide and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of stuff going on. That we don't know about on a daily basis. We're getting defrauded by. There's so many crooks out there, so many grifters, and they're at all levels. They really are beltway bandits. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, like Anthony said, you got to clean them out of your backyard first before you look abroad.
Yeah. How could you turn around and protect yourself from a giant monster when you got all little monsters running around your own house? Right. You got to clean up your backyard so you know you're safe and move forward from there.
Exactly, and that's part of the problem is that if people don't stand together, they stand alone, and when they stand alone, they can easily be taken down. So it's just there is safety in numbers.
That's right.
Rest assured. But unless they drop a nuke, then there isn't really safety in anything.
Right.
Ross, this comes before Winker tomorrow, doesn't it?
This is another issue that's going to be before Winker's court tomorrow. And that's an issue that has to do with the $5 per parcel tax for the water for the Nye County Water District.
Somebody ought to be there and listen to her.
Well, what's going on?
Put it on YouTube and Facebook.
It could be. Well, they're not going to be allowed to record it, but it could be a train wreck for a number of reasons. Number one, Nye County hired one of the biggest firms in Nevada to represent them, so it really wouldn't matter what you responded with. Probably this case is going to get dismissed out. But the big issue in that case is that they say that the firm that's representing the county says that the bill was passed on a certain date, and the minutes show that they actually improperly put the wrong number of the. It's not a bill; it's a resolution. Now, the Nye County Water District's